County Board of Commissioners to order for Wednesday, May 2nd, 2018. And today we have a work session on parole and probation as our first item of business. And then we are going to be doing a tour of the parole and probation facilities. And we have invited our budget committee on that tour. And so I will turn this over to Greg Rickoff, our Director of Operations, and Donovan Dumeier, our Parole and Probation Manager, and let you guys tell us all about parole and probation.
Chair Bosevich, Commissioners, thank you very much for your time. This morning, I'm Greg Rickoff, and I'm the Director of Operations here at the county. Joining me in this presentation is Donovan Dumeier, the Manager of Parole and Probation, as well as Judy Williams and Jeff Kincaid. Today's purpose, of course, is to have this work session and a tour of parole and probation.
I almost forgot one thing.
Yes.
I just want to note for the record that Commissioner Sorensen is excused today. He has a family medical issue and had to take off for that, so I almost forgot to note that. And I'm expecting Commissioner Williams anyway.
We're expecting Commissioner Williams. Thank you. It's a tremendous honor to be working with Donovan to oversee the success of Lane County Parole and Probation. I'd like to talk to you this morning about the remarkable contribution of 60 employees and their contributions to the public safety system, the achievements of the treatment courts, the use of LSCMI, and the innovations that we've brought forward. I will be doing none of that. Today we're talking about space. I look forward to the chance when we're in front of you to talk more about the achievements and the unit and the directions we're moving things in. But we have a pressing issue. This is a chance to provide an update on a strategic priority, talk a little bit about the workspace history, the current conditions, and the need, as well as the relocation effort for parole and probation. The office relocations rarely rise to the level of engaging the Board of County Commissioners. I believe that the financial threshold will require, and really the unique nature of the work that occurs within parole and probation needs your attention, your engagement, and support. Just as an overview, of course, the goal of parole and probation is to help clients navigate their way out of the public safety system effectively, efficiently, and permanently, and with the safety for everyone considered, and that includes not only the clients, the officers, the staff, but the greater community. There's roughly 60 staff people attached to parole and probation. With those 60 staff people, they currently supervise 2,983 clients. Of these individuals, there are 1,546 high-risk individuals, and that number should astound you because it astounds us. It is an anomaly within the state of Oregon for counties to be at that. If you think about that number in the real terms of what are best practices for each client, having 4 contacts a month, that puts us roughly at 6,184 total contacts that we attempt to achieve every month. There's 1,546 high risk, 788 minimum risk, 436 low risk individuals. And Donovan, do you want to jump in and talk a little bit about kind of that client base?
Yeah, so of that client base, 1,546 of those individuals are considered high risk, high needs. They have a variety of different risk need factors, from sex offender supervision to domestic violence to drug addiction, and everything in between. So they all have their own individual risk needs associated with them. Of that client base, I would say 23% are female, which is one of the largest growing populations at this point. So currently, as of today, we have 615 women that are currently under supervision. And so with that, we have a whole new risk needs associated with our women population that is different from our male population that we have to take into consideration in supervision.
Take a moment and talk about how our numbers are upside down from other counties.
Yes, so currently 1,546 high risk. When you look at us in comparison to, we are second to Multnomah County in leading high risk supervision. When you look at us in comparison to Clackamas, who has 550 high-risk individuals, we're almost triple their population here in Lane County. And when you look at that in comparison to Marion and Washington, who are right around 850 high-risk individuals, we are head and shoulders above them in high-risk supervision. And you know, as a result of, and our DA's office is doing an incredible job right now in prosecuting, but this is as of just years and many, many years of no files and failing to prosecute. We've allowed individuals in our community to really graduate and really increase in their criminal maturity and their ability to commit crimes. And so I foresee that in the future with the good work of the DA's office in prosecuting cases, that we will see that trend start to kind of flip. But it took us a while to get here, and it's going to take a while to see that change and transition.
So with that said, I want to share a little bit about how the work gets done. Please think of parole and probation as having 14 outstations. So today we're touring the main office, the second floor of CCC. It basically has 41 officers and staff and supervisors in that building, but there are 14 additional outstations. We have a team here in the courthouse. We have an officer in the Sherman Center. We've got 2 downtown officers, a West University officer, 2 officers out in Sheldon associated with Homes for Good, an officer out in Springfield associated again with Homes for Good, Roosevelt sponsors, women's sponsors, and an officer at the Oaks at 14th. We also have officers, full-time officers at Cottage Grove and Junction City. In Cottage Grove, we're with DHS. In Junction City, we're at Homes for Good office. And then we have part-time officers that cover Cresswell, Veneta, Oak Ridge, and Florence. There's an absolute business necessity for officers to be co-located with partners within the public safety system. You know, it's absolutely best practice to have an officer with the Sheldon Center, to have the engagement with sponsors and to some extent with Homes for Good. But we have tipped the balance from having these decisions for officers placed in these locations based on business need to the fact that we literally just don't have any place to put them. What that means, of course, as well, is that our fleet is dispersed, and that with all of these officers at outstations, it requires a vehicle. Regardless of whether or not the work itself requires a fleet vehicle, they can't pull on a communal fleet system. They have to have a standalone vehicle. So we've got both officers widely dispersed beyond what we would design if we had a chance for that optimal design, but we also have to have cars dedicated, for those locations. So we are beyond the squeezing point in our current main office. In addition to that, we've got some limitations. Of course, we are in the second floor of a formerly secure dorm facility that has been remodeled into cubicle office spaces that serves a number of purposes. I'm going to ask Donovan to share a little bit more about what the limitations currently are and what kind of things we would ask you to look at while you're on tour.
So as that's going around, I think it's important to note that Parole and Probation has done remarkable work and really siding with evidence-based practices, really embracing the philosophies and as to what really is most effective in reducing risk and need, and ultimately recidivism. And I think one thing to mention is Lane County Parole and Probation has joined our system partners in really reducing recidivism over the last several years in our county. So it's despite the barriers that I'm about to talk about and the challenges, these are folks that are just incredibly committed and incredibly competent to the work that they do. And so I provided a handout, and just kind of to bring you through this, and as we're on our tour a little later on today, just to think about some of the accessibility. And one of the things that we really struggle with is being located on the second floor. As you first walk into Parole and Probation, you'll see that there's a fairly steep stair climb there that gets us to the second floor. And as we're looking at persons with disabilities, not only for our clientele, some of our officers that may be on medical leave, some of our partners that come to visit our office, the alternative is, as you look at that map, currently Parole and Probation is required to, for folks that cannot climb those stairs, to press a button. The deputies at the CCC are able to contact us, we meet them downstairs, and as a result, we have to kind of walk them around the facility, and it is a fairly significant walk to the back of the kind of the freight elevator, in which we take them up and then kind of navigate them through the office. And some of the biggest, I think, barriers and what we see is we have folks that just end up meeting with their clients outside just because of the fact that they don't want to walk them around the building. We end up having folks that just, let's get a monthly report. And so the due diligence there is not incredibly taken.
And I would jump, it's a long haul through a secured parking lot to get folks to what is the freight elevator. We're actually going to ask as we tour that you all split up, and we'll have some folks come up the stairs in front, but we'll have some folks make the walk around to the freight elevator so you can understand a little bit of the dynamics there. And think too, well, I think you'll talk about safety in a moment.
Yep.
Because some people come down those stairs in different circumstances when they go up.
So safety is another big concern. Just based on our office configuration, we have officers in very close contact with our clientele, often with no barrier between them, and just want to emphasize that we are focusing on the highest risk supervision, which really possess the highest risk and highest need. And so some of these folks are very dangerous. And so with that, we have many cubicle situations where the officer's back is really towards main entrances as you walk in. So the safety layout is not ideal. With that, the cubicles are not equipped in any way, shape, or form to perform an arrest. So as a result of that, we've had to develop an arrest room in our office, and that's kind of the second picture there. And with some of our high-risk, high-needs folks who have been down the arrest route before, anytime you take a left and walk into that room, it usually equates to arrest. And so folks that have, it's not their first rodeo per se, it really kind of amps their spirit, that amps their, they know what's coming, and so it just kind of changes the dynamic of sometimes the office visit. So within this secure room, we have kind of a padded wall, and so all of the arrests that occur in this location within the office. So if we're playing poker, we're certainly giving our hand before we even start the game. So. In that, we also will be navigating, and you'll see there's those two photos there of pictures that as we arrest folks, we actually have to walk them down in handcuffs, down some very steep flight of stairs. And then, those stairs, just noteworthy, when in the winter when it's raining, they get slick. And so having to walk up and down those stairs without handcuffs would be a challenge. But some of the folks are walking down, and especially if you have individuals who may be resistant, it just increases the likelihood of risk there and danger.
And then you get at least a portion of that long walk back to the secured parking to enter a vehicle to be delivered next door to the check.
And then as you flip it over, confidentiality continues to be a big concern. Just based on the office configurations, we're I don't want to say we're in violation, but we are there with CGIS. It's folks that are sitting in the cubicle. It's easy to see the monitors, just based on the configuration. The open doors really, if there's files that are being used or reports that are being generated, information is out there.
It's going to be done on the CGIS?
Criminal Justice Information System, so that would be our LEDs, those computer systems that are very secure and that require requirements to keep certain confidentiality in place and certain rules around access and viewing.
And breaches of that information are very serious and need to be reported. So there's both the regulatory element as well as, these are people's confidential files on, with a collection of some of their worst moments.
And not to mention, those files sometimes contain confidential victim information as well. And so, rapport assessment, case management, the space is, as you walk in, we might have between 4 and 7 officers in one area. And as officers are having conversations with their clientele, there is no confidentiality. So anything that is said in that room, anybody else in that pod would be able to hear those discussions. And what's really makes it interesting is we have a variety of different clients. We have sex offender clients, we have gang clients, we have burglars. We run all different types of individuals through the office. And so as those conversations are occurring, I think what you get is a significant reluctance for folks to disclose. And when you think about it in terms of rapport building and a professional alliance, having that information, building that confidence in your officer and in the client is very difficult when they're unable to really fully disclose. So case management, again, it also lends to, if you're having discussions around certain things on supervision, it's very difficult to provide directive, provide skill building sessions, modeling, if in fact those things are public. Space limitations, outstations, I think Greg talked quite a bit about that. And it provides really quite a few more barriers in that, one, our officers, the ability for leadership to coach, mentor, teach skills regularly. I mean, there's certain things that you don't consider every day. And with the outstations, vehicles is certainly an area that is a major concern. Meeting space, trainings. My office is currently one of our meeting spaces. So if there is a meeting, I just kindly opt out and find another location. We do have a meetings room that is off the lobby. It's not very private. In fact, most of those discussions can be heard throughout the lobby. So meeting space, trainings, we currently rely on partners throughout the community to host our trainings, defensive tactics, and all sorts of trainings there. And I think parking, with the jail levy passing, the sheriff's office is building their personnel, and it's just we have, which is all very good, but it really has put a significant limitation on parking, and it's been required. I mean, we've had to kind of make adjustments. I know the sheriff's office has had to, park in the ditch and park in spaces where we just don't have the room. And so it's one of those things that we're working through to try to meet the needs, and they're good needs. I mean, we're coming to capacity, but it's just a
good problem to have.
A good problem, yes.
But we are tripping over ourselves, and I don't think it's the best use of the sheriff's and my time to have parking conversations, or Dan and Clint and Donovan having to go out and meet in the fields to try to figure this out, but we're needing to do that out of necessity. We recognize that, the irony of this being a good problem to have, but the sooner we can get into a new home, the sooner we can relieve at least some of that pressure for a while to really help the jail succeed and help the CCC program succeed.
And with I think the many workloads that our staff have, Parking should not be one of them, right? As you're coming to work and you're having to park out on the road or 2 blocks over because there wasn't parking in, a parking lot. That's not a good thing.
All right. So thoughts or questions? So real.
So I'd like to go back to the high risk.
Yes, sir.
And so what I heard you say was that Lane County and Multnomah County are kind of along the same line as far as high risk is concerned, but the 2 counties that are closest to Lane County, especially in population, Clackamas and Marion, seem to be quite a bit below.
Yes.
So have you done some sort of an analysis? Do you have data to show why this is the case? And I'll wait for you. I have an opinion, but it's an opinion, but it's not based on, I don't think it's based on facts. So maybe if you could just kind of walk us through that, because I just have it's a high concern, we'll put it that way.
Okay. So you can talk about the LSCMI in a moment. The issue for us, so there's similar risk assessments being done with clients, really, certainly along the I-5 corridor and in the valley, and so it's quantifiable data that is articulating at where the risk level attends. And we think of a normal community, the risk level having a bit of a pyramid shape, with the high-risk offenders at the top, the smallest population. We are completely inverse to that. So it's not, by population, the number of folks under supervision are roughly the same size, given the population, but that inverse piece.
Yeah, and I would just in comparison to Multnomah, I mean, the population in Multnomah is so much greater. So you're absolutely right. Our comparators would be Marion, Washington, Clackamas, and I think within that scope, we conduct the LSCMI, Level of Services Case Management Inventory, and it gives us a list of all criminogenic risk needs, including history, family, associates, and what we have done. And so looking at it and how I've kind of whittled this down to prosecution is that statewide, the entire state uses the LSCMI. We use the same assessments. We have the same inter-rater reliability exercises. So every year, Lane County, along with every other county in the state, engages in basically fidelity insurance, making sure that we are true to the scores and it's working. And so we are absolutely in line with the state. And so what it boils down to is, I think, as a result of the DA's office just being so lean for so many years and their inability to engage in early prosecution, we've been able to allowed our clientele to be able to kind of elevate in their criminality versus when you take other counties who may be a little bit more rich in their resources for prosecution, and they're able to really engage in that early prosecution, the intervention coming into the system, deterring, providing those services much earlier.
So it's criminal history without intervention is one of the things that looks very different for us. They truly have just had a chance to perfect their criminal behaviors without disruption earlier on.
Okay, so that definitely helps. Commissioner Cameron from Marion County told me that if he had our tax rate in Marion County, he doesn't know how he would govern. It's literally what he told me, because Marion's about $3. We're $1.27, $8.
And that explains the lean DA.
Yeah, it does. And so, that helps. I know there's been significant improvements in the DA's office since Patty in particular took over, and I think that's a good sign. But this helps. This helps kind of because you see that, you hear about that, and it becomes a concern. And one other question I have on that, just to follow up, is do you compare, are these folks who have lived here a long time? Are they people who have moved in? Do you have data like that? I'm out of curiosity.
We have data, and really the rule is if somebody commits a crime in Lane County, if they are not a resident, they're prosecuted and really given reporting instructions back to their hometown. If they are, they would be on supervision. So what we do know is we have upwards of 3,000 people who we've confirmed are residents of some connection to Lane County in their house.
We've got tremendous resources along the wall there, and I would certainly invite the sheriff, the captain, the chief deputy, and whoever, if you would like to jump in terms of the client base, because we're getting folks transitioning out, so you're having a chance to work with the exact same clients, and if you have observations, please, by all means.
Will I have any observations specific to Commissioner Lykin's question? I'm not intimately familiar with the classification of offender based on the systems they use or how it's applied comparatively from one county to the other. I know parts of that can be subjective, and so Marion may not be doing it exactly like Lane, but they are using a similar system, so I can't speak to whatever variances there may be. But I do know that one of the conversations that comes up often in the community is, why don't we do a Maricopa County tent city? And our response is we actually had a tent city long before Maricopa County started folks working. But in today's environment, I don't know that we would have the appropriate inmate population to staff or to occupy the force working today, because we're seeing a more violent, more difficult inmate to manage in the jail by and large. So if we got back to a 700 inmate capacity as we did before we closed the work camp and this community corrections at the jail full capacity, we might get to the point where we have that very low risk offender, minimum custody we call them, that was the type of inmate that lived at the work camp. So our challenges today with a reduced jail capacity is we really are only housing those that are the more dangerous, more violent offenders.
I'm proud of the county's efforts to really get at behavioral health. The number of folks that we see, with behavioral health issues and challenges is extensive, and I think we really do have the right answers. But the system is overloaded, and it just
to piggyback on what the sheriff said, I mean, the data does reflect, we have 536 low-risk people out of almost 3,000 people. So the population that we've identified as low risk is very small.
Commissioner Floyd, any question?
Thank you. And Sid, thanks for exploring that. That's important information to have, and the response really went along with your analysis. It really is, a lot of it is revenue related. Lean DA's office, jail offenders, only high-risk jail offenders are being held, and consequently it makes the job that much more intense. My question is along a little bit different line, though, and that is regarding recruiting and retention. So the conditions that you have, I would expect, I think I know the answer. Can you talk about recruiting and retention and how the conditions that the folks are working under?
Yeah, and I think the conditions certainly do not help. I do believe that the personnel, our Lane County Parole and Probation team, they are an incredibly committed, competent group. I think the folks that have left, it has been for reasons that would be understandable. They have family, they have retirement, and other circumstances. We haven't really heard of folks leaving because they're unhappy with the team. I mean, in fact, the reports that we're getting is this is as good as it's ever been. They love what they're doing. They love the team. But certainly, when we do have folks that are not able to live up to their full potential in building that professional alliance, being able to really engage in the case planning the way it should be done, and developing the strategies and the skill building components, those certain things certainly inhibit or don't help in their ability to navigate towards pro-social change.
And the strong picture that you both painted this morning lends itself to the fact that people really aren't able to be fully justified in their work, fully fulfilled in the work they do, because they don't have, for instance, the client and officer interaction and personal relationship that you hope and expect, which relates to, I've been in HR, job satisfaction is far more important than pay.
I'm anxious about the fact that we've lost a couple employees to promotions, to the chance to advance in other parts of the state, and it's tremendous for them, and it speaks well of us. I'd hate to see us become a farm club for other parts of the state. It's interesting, I don't have any data to prove this, but that when you talk to the officers that are co-located with sponsors or in the specialty courts or in the Sherman Center, these folks have a great, very high level of job satisfaction, and I think it's probably higher than it is for those that are in the main office that are living with the constraints.
And being a farm club, that isn't, we don't desire that, because that's not where we are. Well, if you look around this room right here, and two of the best employees ever from the city of Eugene are now sitting in the Lane County room. So we're not a farm club, we're a destination.
Thank you.
So I had a quick comment. I want to go back to the high-risk percentages a little bit, and I want to try and not place this all in the DA's office. The DA is doing a great job right now.
Yes.
We had to make, after the loss of SRS, we had to make significant cuts in that office, and that's one of the reasons why we had such low. But the other piece of that hasn't been mentioned here is our lack of rural patrol and our presence in rural areas. We allow a lot of criminality to go on completely unchecked in this county. Where what we consider quality of life crimes that are actually the early crimes in somebody's criminal career, like burglaries and property crime, go completely unchecked. So these folks get pretty far down the road because they're starting that crime to support usually a substance abuse issue. And along with that, the longer they have the substance abuse issue, the more chance they're going to have a behavioral health problem that starts to coexist with that. It's just, so as we don't deal with property crime out in the rural areas, and we don't have that strong rural patrol to intervene early in people's careers. One of the things people don't understand is the police side of law enforcement is actually that early intervention. If you have strong patrol and policing, that's the first time you may touch these people in their criminogenic lifetimes and get them into the system early to where we can get them into they're low enough risk to do the diversion programs, to get them into the treatment, the addiction, and deal with behavior. Not let them get down the road of a meth addiction far enough where it's really changed their brain pathways, and that's why they're such a high risk, supervision situation. So I don't want to place this. This is not all about prosecuting early. It's also about arresting early in career.
Nobody's blaming the DA's office for this.
Not at all.
No, but it's one of as we look at why Lane County has this statistic of having such high risk supervision, it's a combination of how our whole system has had to collapse due to the lack of timber payments, and we need to rebuild that system in more. More holistically to ultimately flip this over. And we've been working on the DA's side quite a bit. We've been able to leverage everything from justice reinvestment funds to grants to a little bit of extra general fund to add staff there, which has really helped out both in our percent under supervision, because that was also hurting, because the secondary thing that happened was when we lost DA staff, we lost our percent supervision versus the whole state population supervision. And our community corrections funding that funds your office dropped down, and we actually lost staff there. So your caseloads, not only were you doing higher risk, you were also doing larger caseloads. So,
True.
So getting the DA staff back up was part about trying to get our under supervision up, and it's actually really helped in our community corrections funding. I mean, it's been
Yes.
millions of dollars of difference going from 8% to 9%. As far as the percent of the state population. So I just don't want to lose sight of this as really a very, you're a piece of a huge system.
Yeah, and we are at we're kind of the end phase of this process. And so you're right, it is absolutely every step of this impacts another if it's not. So prosecution, patrol, jail services, all of these things, any weak link in that, it will be felt. That's a large ripple.
You said criminal history without intervention. That sums it up at every step of the way.
Yeah. And I would invite the sheriff on.
No, I couldn't necessarily summarize any better than Commissioner Bozovich did. But we've known that for a long time. I think sometimes I get numb to that, and I don't think of bringing those points up because we've talked about it so often for so many years, and it's an ongoing challenge to change. And of course, anything we do change, as soon as we put 30 more patrol deputies out there policing the community, the DA's office will be ambushed with a caseload that they can't manage, and so they won't have the prosecution concerns, which will then put more pressure on the jail. We'll have jail capacity concerns, which will put more pressure on parole and probation. So it is a system approach, and we have to do it very measured and calculated in each component of the system. But we see that in our communities, rural communities. Where I live, and I'm not a city dweller. I've lived my entire life in the rural reaches of wherever our families have lived over the years. And so I very well see that and experience that we just don't have police in those communities, and most people do as they please until it reaches a point where it has a substantial impact on a neighbor that calls us to where we respond. So there's a lot of unpoliced behaviors that go on.
Bad acts without consequences.
Well, let's. Oh, good.
If I could have one more. So, and it's interesting, this conversation, because, in the city of Springfield, the whole idea about, it just wasn't the jail, but it was kind of the change of the public safety system as a whole. But that actually started with Chief DeForest. That's how, so I was a brand new city councilor, then Chief Smith. But you think about that, that took, by the time the jail was built and open, that was about an 8-year, that's a city of 60,000. We're not talking about a county of 370,000 with 12 incorporated cities. That's the challenge. And so that's why I'm a big believer in our 10-year public safety plan. We have to take it one step at a time. And I know sometimes the public grows impatient, and I get that. And I understand that. But knee-jerk reactions, I will tell you, will set us back. And so this is why I'm liking this conversation and about the improvements that have been made. And the reality is how much longer we still have to go. But I think we've got a good plan in place. And it's good to see the conversations taking place, whether it's with the sheriff, the DA, parole and probation, Health and Human Services, the whole gambit here. I think that's going to be a key as we move along, and it potentially builds confidence to, if the public safety district is the right idea, it'll build confidence with the public that, hey, we've got a plan, we're sticking to it. Because if you look at what's occurred in downtown Springfield, the change has been dramatic since I was first elected mayor in 2000 to where it is today. I'd rather walk at 9 o'clock at night in downtown Springfield than over here. That's my own opinion. It's a safer place now. And the jail has probably done more to offset that, but also started with the trespass piece first, and then patrol and jail. So that's a city, not even the county, which is so much more complicated. So I appreciate this conversation, but sticking to the plan will be key.
Getting back to the
Yeah.
space needs, so we need a new home, both in terms of the size and design, and we're looking for what's practical, what's cost effective. We're going to take in the unique qualities of the staff-client connection, creating a relationship that demonstrates care for the person, the clarity regarding expectations and the boundaries and safety for all. And this is a unique environment where we're mixing with, community and clients individuals that have had at least some success in failing. With the location, we want to talk about the limitations. There are geographic restrictions. We need to avoid areas where there are services to minors, child serving facilities. So I believe the pink.
The green is actually the location.
Well, the pink on there are places that we actually need to avoid.
Yep.
The public transportation is absolutely essential, and we are absolutely trying to minimize the impact on residential neighborhoods. So we are looking at publicly owned land, commercial spaces. So we're looking at the areas that are zoned appropriately. So if it's green, lime green on the map, that's within our area of consideration. Everywhere else is likely off limits, or at least has some real challenges. We are looking for 20,000 square feet of space. We're currently in 10. And we'll talk a little bit more on the tour. We could probably get by with 15 if it's the right 15, but truthfully, we need 20,000 square feet of space. That's for 53 officers and staff. We do currently have 7 vacancies that we're actively trying to fill. We got down to about 3 vacancies, and then with the addition of some positions and with a couple of people leaving the profession, we've had that challenge. 6 supervisors and a manager, and about 80 vehicles. And that's both for personal vehicles, folks coming to work that needs to be in a secured area, as well as the fleet vehicles and supervisor vehicles. We probably need to attend to growth now. We don't want to do this with any level of frequency. Once we find a new home, we want to be there. We are absolutely exploring co-locating with partner programs. It's best practice, but there also can be some financial support for that effort as well. So those are going to be active conversations for us. We really want a space that's conducive to case management. That really means separated workspace from client meeting space. Think of it as a medical model, where our folks are doing their work and have their files and are looking at protected information on their screens, should be a separate space from where they're meeting with clients. The client meeting space needs to be trauma informed and a design that really allows for all possible outcomes, from a handshake and a provision of materials to somebody who's getting sanctioned and having a chance to go back and revisit the jail. It's got to have safe design in all components, and that's human safety, but it's also safe supply for materials. These, again, mixed area uses. We do need gun lockers and safe storage of weapons and evidence, materials, and supplies. We have to consider the growing female client population. As Donovan mentioned, we're over 600, 23% or 600 clients. And do know that when we talk about the female clients, that 87 to 93% have trauma in their history. It's just a fact that they have experienced abuse in forms that re-traumatizing is not helping anyone. So there's actually best practices. Best practices call for separation. It's rare and very difficult to get to that, but we have to attend to a design that takes that into account. We need effective and efficient design. That's, not just energy efficiency and the minimization of hazards, but there's real sight and sound needs. The ability to have confidential conversations, but the ability for officers to respond quickly and have some control over lines of sight for staff and clients. We've got to pay attention to access. We also have an aging population amongst our high-risk folks. And the access has been a huge problem for us.
So when you say aging population, what do you mean by that?
We've got a number of high-risk folks who are starting to get elderly. People, when you think of the age demographics, don't think of everybody's 18 to 24. It really is the full range. And as folks have been able to perfect their criminology, these are folks who...
I can certainly provide some data that really clearly, and it really is really spread out through the different age groups there.
Custody and arrest requirements. There are sanctions. There are people that will be transported back to the jail. And of course, the UA bathrooms. There's a lot of urine analysis work that is part of their conditions of parole and probation. So we have to pay attention to that. An optimal design would give us flexible space, the ability to have all staff meetings. At this point, we go over to Charlton to be able to meet as a team. There's a ton of training. There's physical and survival training that occurs. Right now, we borrow space for that. Team conference space right now, you're either in the break room or in Donovan's office. Just a fact. Or you're meeting outside the building. These client interview rooms, we talked a little bit about that they're sterile, that they're trauma-informed decisions. We would love to be able to have locker space and bathrooms separate for staff from what the clients use for the UAs, and that's.
And that actually brings up another great point. Is currently we do not have restroom facilities for folks that are coming in to visit our office outside of staff bathrooms. So as a result, I know several months ago, been a few years ago now, we had concerns from some of our business community partners who were concerned that clients were coming in and using their facilities, and so certainly puts a strain on the sheriff's office when folks are coming down into their office asking for restroom facilities, and no, sorry, we don't really have public restrooms here, so we send folks on their way to kind of find other restroom options. So that is it's a significant issue.
And then finally, we understand, and you have the ability to test that for yourselves, that the CCC space can be repurposed and used, maybe not immediately, but pretty quickly for, what would really be a win-win for the sheriff's office and parole and probation. But that second floor, as soon as it's made available, will get utilized. I don't know if anyone would want to speak to that.
Well, that would create the opportunity for us to actually engage with our partners. Ideally, housing local offenders, get them off the streets into a supervised environment where they can start their process of being in a safe environment, gaining employment, working towards programming. It would also open up opportunities with DOC as far as the RLAN partnership with sponsors, getting these folks down from prison, reintegrated into our community, and then up to sponsors. So it would be a win-win. It used to be 118 beds. I think we're at 39 beds now. So.
And the RLAN has given us an outstanding opportunity to really kind of vet that model, and it has been incredibly successful.
I think the numbers, we've got 2 failures out of
Yeah, and
100.
and these are some of the most high-risk folks that are coming out on supervision. So it's,
These are folks that are from our community
Yeah.
that, given that extra attention prior to release, makes those numbers so high. for success.
And directing them to post-release services that they may need for mental health issues, for instance.
It also significantly reduces that prison population as well, because they're being released upwards to 60 days before even their short-term transition leave in some cases. So we're actually making a significant dent on that prison population as well through that program.
So at this time, you're asking yourself, what have we done to get ourselves into a fiscal position to successfully relocate? And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Judy to talk a little bit about where we are financially.
Yeah, and I'll be pretty brief, and you'll hear more about probation during the budget committee process in the coming weeks as well. So just to kind of briefly lay out a foundation of the resources, as you know and likely remember, a large portion of the revenue that PMP, probation, gets is CCA, Community Corrections Act funding dollars through the state. There is no general fund in probation, and I think 2011 is kind of the last point where general fund was not received for parole and probation. There's a slight amount coming in now with the PO that's housed at the jail, but a majority of the resources is through the CCA funds. And as Chair Bozovich, you mentioned earlier, the formulas that are involved with calculating that revenue source are quite complex, and they're hard to forecast. It's nearly impossible to forecast out. So typically, if we were looking at building a new building or finding another option, it would be great to have like a 5-year, 10-year forecast of revenue source. How does that look? And it's been very difficult to do just based on the source that parole and probation has. But we're early on in the process, and so we wanted to bring to you what we have in the works so far. So the Public Safety Coordinating Council has a budget committee as part of the Public Safety Coordinating Council, and one of their tasks is to have that budget committee, which is made up of multiple partners, and they allocate resources when we do get the CCA funds, and how that gets allocated goes through that budget committee process. And it's a great collaboration effort, and recently, during the 17-19 biennium, PSCC Budget Committee not only awarded additional funds to parole and probation for some ongoing services and for like the women's initiative that we briefly talked about, but they've also awarded specifically for relocation efforts $500,300 to parole and probation for a relocation effort. In addition, they've also awarded $50,000 to go towards renovating that second floor space. So if parole and probation and when parole and probation would move out, there is some money and funds there to renovate it to possibly back to CCC beds. Parole and probation also has done a great job in terms of doing due diligence. So anytime there's been extra carryover funds, mostly due to vacancies, they've been putting that extra money aside and putting it into reserves. So after this 18-19 budget year, they will have $1.5 million in reserves set aside specifically for relocation. So all resources have not yet been identified for this project, but we are just coming to you early on in the process so that you are aware of what's information apprised of the project, the goals and intended outcomes of securing the location.
So just a quick question. The 1.5 in reserves does not include the 500,000 from the,
That does include it.
that does include it?
Right,
Okay.
yes.
I just want to make sure I was talking 1.5 or 2. Okay.
Correct, yeah. The 500,000, it was allocated for 2 years because it's a biennium. So, yeah, that would
So
include.
1.5 at the end of the biennium. Total.
$1.5,303,000.
I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about how your folks are thinking about, this move and the importance of being attentive to and participating as they.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have, and this has been, I mean, since I started almost 5 years ago, this has been a major consideration in relocation. And so these conversations among staff have been occurring for some time, that the space is not ideal. And even when, I first started with, Judy, we were having these discussions around the space and some of the concerns. But the team is absolutely on board. It is fully our intent to incorporate the entire team in developing the space considerations. At the end of the day, our parole and probation officers perform the work. And so therefore their input, the union's input is vital as we move forward and really developing these plans. And so it isn't just going to be myself and Greg saying, oh, well, this looks good to us. There will be an enormous amount of consideration for the entire team and making sure the space is the best fit for our operation.
So, and did we cover the $30,000 annual cost for the current space? What we're paying right now for the current space is?
It's $30,000 a year for the current space. There's also multiple other factors in play. $18,000 a year that we spend for parking. All of those are kind of pieces of when we're looking at options. We're looking for larger parking space to kind of help alleviate some of those costs. All of the caged fleet vehicles that are dispersed in all of these out location areas. We could also have savings there if we're more pooled in one location. So there's lots of pieces to the pie in terms of, yeah.
So at this point, the plan to find a new location is to retain an architect. We've got a good sense of what the needs are, but we want to test those and really focus on the business needs and understanding of the unit size and potential for growth. And then we're going to evaluate options. We're not eliminating, buying, building, or leasing space. There will be an advisory team from the division that will help with the design. This is a real partnership with staff and officers, and we're eager to have that be an opportunity for employee engagement, actually, to continue to promote the progress we're making in terms of how we work together. We assume that the fiscal commitment will require the board's actions, and there may perhaps be public interest in whatever site we propose. So Donovan and I will keep you informed along the way, and will very likely be returning to you with a decision. We hope sooner rather than later. I think that's, what have we missed? What have we forgotten? All right, I think that's what we have for you today.
Great. Well, thank you. With that, if there's no other business to the board, we will, I guess the tour is not an official meeting because we're allowed to do tours outside of public meetings. So I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this regular board meeting, and we'll see everybody at 10:30 for the tour. So we are adjourned.